Hi everyone, today I want to go through the kettlebell swing. One of the most common things I get asked is basically why am I getting a sore back when I'm doing a swing. Now I don't know why exactly. I'm going to give you certain cues that will probably help in reducing this back pain. But whenever I'm reviewing people's form and sending their videos to watch, one of the most common things several of the most common things I'm seeing is a loss of tension somewhere in the core and losing your neutral spine. So this is the first thing, and this comes with mastering the hip hinge. It's not just about understanding that positioning, but also being able to maintain that nice neutral spine throughout the entire hip hinge. What I mean is, you start off with your neutral spine, head and neck in line, and whenever you're going into the hip hinge, that it doesn't become lumbar extension. You're not overusing these muscles, but you're maintaining that nice tension at the front, keeping that core engaged as you're swinging back. It's all in the hips and nothing's happening in the lower back. So if you're loading properly in the hips, then this is where the weight will go whenever you're swinging back, hamstrings and glutes. And then you can snap your hips forward using the same muscles and get the kettlebell up. The weight is here, it's coming into here. Versus if you're coming down, you're losing your hip hinge and then you're pulling your lower back, then the weight is loading here, and whenever you're going back up again, you've no way to get that weight up but to muscle it up by using this, your lower back. That is most likely why people are having strain and pain things happening there. The other reason is that whenever you're swinging up again, you don't have sufficient glute strength or awareness, or just that rapid snap of the hips is not happening. You're not reaching full hip extension. You're just stopping shy of hip extension, and then you're going into lumbar extension to try to get the kettlebell up. So for now, forget about how high the kettlebell is going and focus on getting your glutes working enough in order to snap the kettlebell forward. This requires them to be loaded properly first, which is why I wanted to emphasize the hinge and maintaining that neutral spine so you are feeling that stretch into the back. So to recap on the hinge, get a dowel or a mop stick like me, have it along your spine, contact with the back of your head, between your shoulders and your sacrum. Maintain those 3 points of contact, no less and no more, because you could lose one but also you could gain one by rounding your back out. So keep those nice neutral spine. Engage the front of your core. Those abs are very important. Breathe in and keep that breath is there to help you keep the abs engaged, to stop anything. It's providing support to your spine basically. So as you're hinging back, keeping that tension, keeping those points of contact, nice neutral spine, and then hips forward. Your stance is at around hip width, or slightly wider than hip width apart. You're keeping your toes, all of them, on the ground so that your big toe doesn't start raising up. Master this hip hinge before. Really ingrain that exercise before you start swinging a kettlebell. Using a dowel like this, you can use a band or a cable machine to do a band or cable pull through, same movement. This is a great one for learning the hip hinge, because your arms are attached to your side just like they will be with the swing, but you're not obviously going away out in front. You're keeping the cable here in front of your hips, so it's just this part of the hip hinge that you're doing, the swing. Imagine it as a swing. So, and then you can master the Romanian deadlift with a light weight to start with, or a light barbell, and that's where the weight starts at the top. Shoulders are back and down, and that's just your natural hip hinge there, your Romanian deadlift. The cue you can use to make sure you're using the right muscles is feeling this in the back of your leg versus the quads. Sometimes it's very difficult to get people to move independently at the hips versus your knees and your spine, so people will be tempted to do a squat. Or as you're going back, like I said, you're moving out the lower back. You have to learn to keep this as a unit and just move from here. The knees bend, but they don't come forward. They're kept back, nice vertical, as mostly vertical shins. Sometimes, depending on people's genetic makeup, their knee might be a little bit more forward than vertical, but you're not wanting a big shift forward because then obviously you're going into a squat. So that's your hip hinge. Then what you want to do, that's how you're going to load the hamstrings and the glutes, because if you maintain that nice neutral spine, the loading is going to be down in the right direction as long as you don't lose that tension. So really important, breathing in, keeping that core, and then on your way up, snapping those hips forward. And that's where you exhale forcefully, as again, maintaining tension there in the front. But what happens more is that the glutes aren't firing enough to help snap that kettlebell forward. So demonstrate where you're stopping shy of hip extension and you're loading, and then it's just this. The hips aren't coming forward. And then you know you're not quite getting there, so to get the kettlebell up, you're starting this. This might look exaggerated, but basically what's happening is your hips aren't coming forward enough to propel the kettlebell up. And you're thinking, that kettlebell isn't getting high enough, I must muscle this up somehow, either with my arms or with my lower back, so it appears that you are getting the kettlebell swing right. But then over time, you're like, my lower back seems to be getting sore. So forget about how high you're going, focus on where that force is coming from. How is that kettlebell getting to here or wherever? Is it coming from here or is it coming from here? So maybe have somebody video you and look at it yourself and see if it looks like you are maintaining that neutral spine, or it looks like you're getting the hip snap. It's a very rapid movement and there's a lot of force in there. So we have to be able to have contraction happening of the glutes quite quickly to maintain that. So practice this with your other exercises that do the hip hinge. When you're extending your hips during a squat, even if you're going into your squat, start squeezing the glutes throughout these movements, so you're getting used to ingraining that. Use exercises like the glute bridge, hip thrust to really practice and building up strength at that end range of hip extension. And over time, with as well being able to focus there, then you'll really just reinforce that connection between your mind and your muscle and everything coming together, the coordination. And that's the final point I want to make, is a little bit of timing with this. So what happens often, the kettlebell swinging down and you sit back too soon, so you've got this big gap here, and then what happens is as you're swinging down, your hands go too low because you've got this big gap, and now you've got a big gap here, and then you're kind of between a squat, the weight is going down vertically and you're kind of horizontal, so then here's going to be rounding out and it's all messed up. So basically, imagine the contact is happening, you're sitting back when your arms touch your sides. So this cue is actually a great one to remind yourself, tense. So imagine your arms are coming down, so you're swinging back into that swing, and then snap forward and let the kettlebell just float up itself. Then you want to pull it down again, as if you're going to punch yourself in your crotch, which you're not, of course. The fear is there, and you want to, if you've really short arms, then maybe have fear that you'll hit yourself, but nobody's going to have short arms, and everyone can sit back enough to let the kettlebell go in to a higher point in the groin or in the crotch than away down here, and you're not going to compromise then your form, and you're not going to lose energy through these gaps that happen along the way. So the tension is important, tension through the core to maintain that neutral spine, loading into the hips then, but then also learning to snap the hips forward with your glutes, letting the kettlebell and your arms propel up, but then using the arms coming down as your cue to sit back. So as you get that contact, then you sit back and then snap forward and the kettlebell floats up. If you're finding you're using your arms, maybe the kettlebell's too light, or you're just so used to using your arms for everything. This is a very common one for guys. So used to using your arms for everything. Go to a single arm swing with the same weight if you want. And for a single arm swing, I like to have my thumb pointing forward, because when you're rolling your shoulder that direction, it's more likely to be sort of packed down nicely, versus this way, which kind of rounds out your shoulder forward. This is kind of neutral when you're doing your two-handed swing, but for me, I find this one much better for people who have difficulty engaging their lats. So you want to really just pull that shoulder back and down when you're swinging. thumb facing forward, but you are wrapping this around the kettlebell for support and then snapping forward. With the other arm, you want to match both sides, so let it swing back and forward. This will help cue your hip on that side so it's not lagging behind in any way, and it gets you practicing then for when you are actually doing the two-handed swing. Those are things that will improve over time. Don't get frustrated, because if I look back at my form in my very first tutorial for the swing, first of all, I was doing a squat. I was bad. Over time, it became more like a stiff-legged swing, so it was very straight-legged. But now, I've learned more, and there's different cues and there's different things that we're learning along the way, and so it will change over time. It's a bit of a journey. Even though I did that article last year in the 3 common errors, which is basically what I've discussed today, the way I taught it was differently, and my understanding of the movement was different than it is now. So somebody asked me, how do I get my swing to look like yours? Just keep improving, keep practicing, and keep learning, because when we stop learning and we just think we're right and nobody else can change us or change our form, or we're not prepared to listen, then that's when basically you've failed. So be prepared to have critique and take it on board, and then do your own research and find out, well, is this better? And if it is, then start applying that to your own performance. So this method is now more beneficial to me than my original swing was, and it's improved because I'm aware of all of these different elements coming together, especially having the engagement of the core and the breathing, having the contact there and that tension throughout the entire movement, so you're not losing it along the way. So maybe what was happening at some points in my swing was swinging back, you're in the hinge to start with, but then you lose the tension and you're just hyperextending the lower back because you've lost it at the front here. Final tip is, if you are learning this and you are fatiguing very quickly, then don't do big long sets. Reduce the amount of either reps down to maybe 10 reps at a time, 5 or 10, but do like more sets. So instead of doing 3 sets of like 40 seconds, do maybe 4 or 5 sets of 20 seconds. Just keep them really short so you can really focus in on these different things, because there's a lot to think about whenever such a fast and explosive movement. So hopefully these points will help you really just tidy up your swing, and then you can go on to do other things as you're getting stronger. Remember that if you're doing a full body workout, you will be fatiguing the muscles in all these different ways. To be aware of the same type of principles whenever you're performing other exercises. That's it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed these cues and they'll be useful for you. And if you have any questions, just leave me a comment below or send me an email, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Hope you enjoy it. See you soon.